Uh, Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. I just wanted to make a short stakeout before we have a meeting on women, peace and security on the recent developments that took place in Ukraine. You know that the Ukrainian military continued to shell civilians. Recently their assaults have intensified. In fact, they never stopped those assaults. And on June 13th, the Kiev regime launched a large-scale shelling of the city of Donetsk and adjacent areas in the Donetsk People's Republic. The Ukrainian military fired around 350 rockets and artillery rounds. This shelling claimed lives of 6 civilians, including a child. More than 30 people were injured, and altogether, since the start of the special military operation, more than 100 civilians died in the territory of Donetsk and Lugansk republics. This shelling could not bring to Kiev any military advantage, as Donetsk is not on the line of contact. There are no military objects where the shells fell. The Ukrainian military deliberately targeted civilian districts and infrastructure, hospitals, markets, residential areas. It was nothing else but a cold-blooded revenge against those most vulnerable, the ordinary people of Donbass. The mapping of targets clearly shows that the aim of the Kiev regime was to inflict as many civilian casualties as possible. One of such targets was the Vishnevsky maternity hospital. The building was damaged. The staff and the patients, pregnant women, were forced to evacuate to the basement. 3 newborns in the intensive care unit could not be evacuated, and along with 3 doctors had to stay on the upper floors, which put their lives at huge risk. Fortunately, this time there were no casualties, but you can only imagine despair and fear of these women and medical staff of the hospital they had to endure. For the people of Donetsk, and all this is sad and horrifying reality, unlike notorious fakes about Mariupol maternity hospital, which was in fact used by Ukrainian nationalists as a firing position. In Donetsk, lives continued to be claimed by the Kiev regime. When Maisky market was shelled, the father walked out only to discover that his wife and daughter had been killed in shelling. It is a disgrace that the Western media largely stay blind, deaf and numb to these appalling incidents. And those who speak up only do so to promote nonsense that the city was shelled by the Russian forces. This is a clear illustration of the double standard approach of the Western media. Zelensky hypocritically claims that Kiev is not interested in shelling of civilians, but facts prove him wrong. The trajectory of the rockets shows that they were fired from the territory under the control of the Kiev regime, and these are exactly those types of weaponry supplied to Kiev by its Western sponsors. The recent shelling of Donetsk is another horrible war crime committed by the agonizing Kiev regime. It is a flagrant violation of international humanitarian law, including the principles of proportionality, military necessity, distinction, and humanity. Kiev regime will be held responsible for that. However, its Western sponsors are equally responsible for these horrendous crimes. The material evidence shows that the people in Donetsk were killed by the 155mm artillery rounds supplied to the Kiev regime by the NATO countries, including the US, Canada, the Netherlands, France, and others. There have been reports about the cluster munition of the French origin found in Donetsk after shelling, though France declared that it destroyed its cluster munitions stockpile in 2016. On June 1st, the US Undersecretary of Defense announced that the US has transferred to Ukraine 108 M777 howitzers and 220,155mm artillery rounds. These long-range armaments enabled the Ukrainian army to strike beyond the line of contact into residential areas with no military presence. And now this Western artillery is killing innocent people. I would like to say to the Western countries supplying weaponry to Ukraine, the blood of civilians is on your hands. The tragedy in Donetsk confirms once again that you are fighting a proxy war with Russia with the hands of Ukrainians till the last Ukrainian. It is also obvious that the Kiev regime will not hesitate to kill its own people. As recently as a couple of days ago, or maybe yesterday, the presidential advisor to President of Ukraine, Podolyak, revealed to the New York Times recently that the Ukrainian military will now openly use the methodology of an urban combat, using civilians as a human shield and destroying civilian infrastructure. Thank you very much. Am I supposed to answer?
Wait, can you say something about the U.S. proposal to build silos at the Polish border in order to export Ukrainian grain? And will there be any interruptions by Russia?
I have not heard about that proposal, frankly. Cannot say yet anything.
Ambassador, Turkish Foreign Minister today said that safe corridors could still be established in the Black Sea without clearing the mines for grain exports, and then they were waiting for Russia's reaction to the plan. What do you have to say on that?
We are not responsible for establishing safe corridors. We said that we could provide safe passage. If these corridors are established, and to establish them, it's obvious it's either to demine the territory which was mined by the Ukrainians, or to ensure that the passage goes around those mines that are in the harbor. I think I have to go to listen to the Secretary General.
What's the possibility to have another evacuation plan with UN and RCRC and with the Ukrainian side?
From where? From where?
Sorry?
From where?
From Severodonetsk.
Severodonetsk, the plant, the Azov plant, you mean?
Yeah.
The issue is that they keep, according to various estimates, up to 500 civilians in there. An elder person luckily went out of that from captivity, and he was given evidence that the conditions in which people are held are horrible. They don't have water, they don't have food, they are in desperate condition, but the Ukrainian forces will not let them go. We are providing humanitarian corridors, but nobody is allowed to go out.
Corridor is go to the Russian-backed force controlled area, right?
Sorry?
It's go to the Russian force controlled area.
They are free to choose where to go. We said it from day one. They can go east or west at their discretion. Thank you very much.